The mess was beyond description. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling like ancient tapestries. Dust coated every surface in a thick, suffocating blanket. The floorboards creaked under my feet, threatening to give way with each step. But that wasn't what stole my breath. It was the wall directly across from the entrance, covered entirely with photographs. Hundreds of them. All of me. Me as a little girl with missing front teeth. Me graduating high school. Me on my wedding day. Photos I'd never seen before. Moments I'd forgotten. All meticulously arranged in chronological order. A timeline of my existence preserved in this decaying house that smelled of mildew and memories. "What the hell, Grandma?" I whispered, my voice swallowed by the emptiness around me. I'd come with nothing but a hastily packed suitcase and the cruel echo of my husband Thatcher's words. "Your own grandmother thought you were worthless," he'd sneered, brandishing the lawyer's letter about my inheritance like evidence in a trial against me. "Prescott gets a penthouse worth millions, and you get this dump. Even she knew you'd never amount to anything." His disgust had been palpable when he'd driven me to the property on the outskirts of town. He hadn't even turned off the engine. "Don't call me until you figure out what you're doing with this place." And by figure out, I mean sell it so you have something to contribute to our marriage for once. Then he'd peeled away, leaving me in a cloud of dust before the dilapidated Victorian that had apparently been mine for all of 3 hours. I stepped closer to the wall of photographs, my fingertips hovering over a picture of me at 7 years old. I was sitting on this very porch, reading a book while Grandma Cordelia gardened in the background. I'd spent every summer here until I was 12. Then Grandma moved to the retirement community, and this house had been boarded up, or so we'd all been told. The sound of my phone ringing made me jump. Prescott's name flashed on the screen. "Enjoying your inheritance?" My brother's voice oozed with the same smug superiority I'd endured since childhood. The golden child. The successful one. The one who'd done everything right. "It's interesting." I turned away from the photo wall. "Congratulations on your penthouse. Look, Eleonora, I'm calling because Thatcher contacted me." He paused, and I could picture him in his corner office, feet propped on his expensive desk. "He said you're probably going to try to contest the will." "What? I never said—" "It won't work. The will is ironclad. I made sure of it." "You made sure of it?" "What does that mean, Prescott?" "It means I was there for Grandma while you were busy playing housewife." I visited her. I took her to appointments. I earned what she left me. The familiar ache of inadequacy tightened around my chest. I visited her, too. "Once a month out of obligation doesn't count, Eleonora. Look, I'm just calling to warn you not to waste your money on lawyers. Accept what you got and move on." I glanced back at the photo wall. "Did you know about this place? That she kept it all these years?" A slight hesitation. "Of course. I helped her manage all her properties." "Then you knew what kind of condition it was in when she left it to me?" "It's not my fault you got the short end of the stick. Maybe if you'd made something of yourself, instead of rushing into marriage with the first man who showed interest." I hung up. His words stung because they echoed what I'd heard my entire life. Prescott was the planner, the achiever, the one with potential. I was the dreamer, the one who needed looking after. The light was fading, casting long shadows through the grimy windows. I had nowhere else to go. Thatcher had made it clear I wasn't welcome home until I had contributed something. My bank account held exactly $874, my fun money, as Thatcher called it. The small allowance I received from his accounting firm's profits. I found what must have been the living room and brushed decades of dust from an ancient velvet sofa. As I sat, something crinkled in my pocket. The letter from Grandmother Cordelia's lawyer. I pulled it out and reread it in the dim light. The property at 47 Wisteria Lane, including all contents and surrounding acreage, to my granddaughter, Eleonora Harrington Voss. It is my sincere hope that she will find what she needs there. Find what I needed? What I needed was a functioning roof and plumbing, not cryptic messages from beyond the grave. I folded the letter and looked around the room. Besides the sofa, there was a fireplace with a mantel covered in more framed photos, bookshelves sagging under the weight of old volumes, and an antique secretary desk in the corner. Something about that desk called to me, and I crossed the room, pulled open the roll top, and found an envelope with my name written in Grandma Cordelia's elegant handwriting. Inside was a single key and a note. The journey begins in the attic. Don't let them take what's rightfully yours. They'll try. A chill ran down my spine. Who would try to take what from me? This house was barely habitable. What could possibly be here that anyone would want? I considered calling Thatcher. Despite his cruelty, he was still my husband of 5 years. He'd know what to do. But the memory of his parting words stopped me. For once, I needed to figure this out on my own. Finding the attic wasn't difficult. A narrow staircase behind a door at the end of the second-floor hallway led up to a low-ceilinged space that spanned the entire top floor. Unlike the rest of the house, the attic was immaculately organized. Labeled boxes lined the walls. Clean sheets covered furniture. And in the center of the room stood a massive oak trunk with a padlock. I knelt before it, hands trembling as I fitted the key from the envelope into the lock. It turned with surprising ease, as if it had been recently oiled. The lid was heavy, but it opened silently, on well-maintained hinges. Inside was not the treasure I half expected, nor the family heirlooms I might have hoped for. Instead, I found notebooks, dozens of them, all identical black leather-bound journals filled with my grandmother's neat script. I lifted the first one and opened to a random page. Today, I watched them take her again. They believe I don't know what they're doing to her, but I've been gathering evidence. Prescott says I'm being paranoid, that she's getting the best care, but I know what I saw. I will get her out. I will find a way to make this right. My hand shook as I flipped to the front of the journal. The first entry was dated 20 years ago, when I was just 10 years old. It began simply, "I fear for Eleonora's future. What they've done to me, they will do to her if I don't protect her. This record is my insurance." I grabbed another journal, then another, scanning entries at random. They all referenced me, my parents, my brother. They mentioned places and events I barely remembered and others I'd never heard of. Names of doctors, lawyers, bank accounts. When Voss approached me about investing in his firm, I recognized the same pattern. He doesn't want Eleonora for herself. He wants access to what he thinks she'll inherit. I've redirected most of the accessible assets to offshore accounts. The property remains the safest hiding place. They've forgotten about it entirely. Thatcher? My husband had approached my grandmother about investments before we even met? That couldn't be right. I was so absorbed in the journals that I didn't hear the car approaching until headlights swept across the attic window. I snapped the journal shut and peered outside to see Thatcher's black Audi pulling up to the house. Panic surged through me. I quickly replaced the journals in the trunk, locked it, and pocketed the key. I made it downstairs just as he pounded on the front door. "Eleonora, I know you're in there." I opened the door to find Thatcher looking less composed than I'd ever seen him. His normally perfectly styled hair was disheveled, and his eyes held a wildness that made me take a step back. "What are you doing here?" "You said not to call, until ... That was before I spoke with your brother?" He pushed past me into the house, his gaze scanning the room frantically. "Why didn't you tell me about this place?" "I didn't know about it until today, just like you." He turned to face me, suddenly calm again. The abrupt shift in his demeanor was more frightening than his anger had been. "We need to talk strategy." This place is a liability, but the land it sits on could be valuable. We should list it immediately. I haven't decided what I'm doing with it yet." He laughed, a sharp sound devoid of humor. "Oh, honey, you don't have a choice. We can't afford to keep a second property, especially one this decrepit. Besides, your name might be on the deed, but we're married. What's yours is mine." A strange clarity washed over me. For the first time, I heard the notes of control that had always been present in Thatcher's voice, but that I'd mistaken for concern. Actually, I inherited this before marriage. It's separate property. His eyebrows rose. "Been talking to a lawyer already?" "That's unlike you." He stepped closer, reaching out to brush my hair from my face with a gentleness that no longer felt loving. "You're upset about what I said earlier. I understand. But we need to be practical. This house is worthless to us. Maybe to you." I stepped back. "I think I want to stay here tonight. I need time to process everything." The look that flashed across his face was pure rage. There and gone so quickly, I might have missed it if I hadn't been watching closely. "Don't be ridiculous. This place probably isn't even safe. There's likely black mold, asbestos." He glanced around with exaggerated concern. "I can't let you risk your health." "I'll be fine for one night." "Eleonora." His voice hardened. "Get your things. We're going home. Now." 5 hours ago, I would have obeyed without question, but something had shifted. Maybe it was the wall of photographs showing a life I'd forgotten I'd lived. Maybe it was the trunk of journals hinting at secrets I didn't yet understand. Or maybe it was simply that, for the first time in years, I was standing in a space that belonged solely to me. "No," I said quietly. "I'm staying." Thatcher stared at me as if I'd started speaking in tongues. Then he laughed again, that same humorless sound. "Fine. Enjoy your night in this dump. When the roof caves in on you, don't say I didn't warn you." He headed for the door, then turned back. "Oh, and don't bother calling Prescott. He agrees with me that this place should be sold immediately. He's drawing up the papers tomorrow." After he left, I sank onto the dusty stairs, heart pounding. What had gotten into both of them? It was just an old house, falling apart and filled with junk. Why this desperate rush to sell it? I returned to the attic and the trunk of journals, determined to find answers. I read until my eyes burned, piecing together a narrative that seemed impossible. According to Grandma Cordelia, my family, led by my parents and later including Prescott, had systematically gaslighted her for years, convincing doctors she was paranoid and delusional in order to gain control of her substantial assets. She'd played along, pretending to believe she was confused while secretly documenting everything and hiding what assets she could. The most disturbing entries concern me. Apparently, my frequent illnesses as a child weren't natural. My grandmother suspected I was being medicated to remain compliant and dependent. My marriage to Thatcher wasn't coincidental. He'd been introduced to me deliberately after approaching my family about business opportunities. It sounded like the ravings of a truly paranoid mind. Except certain things rang true. My foggy childhood memories, the mysterious ailments that had plagued me until I moved away for college, the way my family had enthusiastically supported my relationship with Thatcher despite his controlling tendencies, the way Thatcher managed all our finances and doled out my allowance despite my having a college degree. Around 2 a.m, I found something that made my blood run cold. A journal entry from just months before Grandma Cordelia's death mentioned a safety deposit box at First Mercantile Bank. I've secured copies of all evidence there, including the medical reports Eleonora never saw and documentation of the true extent of my estate. The key is hidden where only she would think to look, where only I would think to look. I glanced around the attic, overwhelmed by the task of searching an entire house. But then I remembered the wall of photographs. I hurried downstairs and stood before it, scanning the images more carefully this time. In nearly every picture, I was reading. Books had been my escape as a child, my constant companions. And there, in a photo of me at about 12, I was curled up in the window seat of what had been my bedroom, completely absorbed in my favorite book, The Secret Garden. I rushed upstairs to what had been my childhood bedroom. The window seat was still there, its cushions faded and worn. I pulled them off and examined the wooden base. Nothing seemed unusual until I pressed on each panel. The third one had some give to it. I pushed harder, and it popped open to reveal a small compartment containing a cloth-wrapped bundle. Inside was another key, smaller, newer, and a photograph I didn't recognize. It showed my grandmother standing before an impressive brick building, her arm around a much younger me. We were both smiling. On the back was written, "The day we secured your future." First Mercantile, Box 482. I couldn't sleep after that. I spent the rest of the night cleaning one room to make it habitable, then showered in the surprisingly functional bathroom. The water ran rust-colored at first, but eventually cleared. At 7:30, I called the one person I knew I could trust, my college roommate, Larissa Valhoven. She'd never liked Thatcher, had always said he had weird energy. I'd dismissed her concerns as overprotectiveness. "Nora, is everything okay?" Her voice was thick with sleep. "I need your help. Can you come pick me up? I'll explain everything, but I don't want to talk about it over the phone." 2 hours later, Larissa's beat-up Honda pulled up outside the house. Her eyes widened as she took in the dilapidated structure. "This is what your grandmother left you?" Wow. No offense, but I know. I climbed into her car, but there's more to it. "Can you take me to First Mercantile Bank?" On the way, I gave her the condensed version of events, the inheritance, Thatcher's reaction, the journals, and the hidden key. I left out the more disturbing allegations, still not entirely believing them myself. "So your husband kicked you out because you inherited a fixer-upper instead of a penthouse? That's low even for Thatcher." Larissa shook her head. "And now he and your brother are pressuring you to sell immediately? Sounds suspicious." That's what I thought. "But Grandma Cordelia's journals?" I hesitated. "They paint a disturbing picture. I need to see what's in that safety deposit box before I draw any conclusions." At the bank, a polite manager escorted me to the vault after verifying my identity. Box 482 was larger than I expected, one of their premium-sized boxes. The manager left me alone in a private viewing room with the heavy metal container. Inside, I found several sealed manila envelopes, a small jewelry box, and a letter addressed to me in Grandma Cordelia's handwriting. I opened the letter first. "My darling Eleonora, if you're reading this, 2 things are true. I am gone, and you've found your way to the house despite their efforts to keep you from it. I've left breadcrumbs. I pray you'll follow. What I'm about to tell you will seem incredible, perhaps even the delusions of an old woman. But the evidence is all here. Your parents, your father especially, have been embezzling from the family trust for decades. When I discovered the discrepancies, they began a campaign to discredit me, including having me diagnosed with dementia and paranoia. I played along because fighting openly would have cost me any chance of protecting you. You were always different, Eleonora. Sensitive, intuitive, kind in ways the rest of them could never understand. They saw these qualities as weaknesses to be exploited. The vitamins and supplements they gave you throughout your childhood were designed to make you compliant and dependent. The medical records proving this are in envelope 3. Your marriage to Thatcher Voss was arranged. He approached Prescott first, looking for investment opportunities, when they realized he shared their values, namely greed, above all else, they introduced him to you. The correspondence is in envelope 4. The true extent of my estate is documented in envelope 1. The house I left you seems worthless, but the land it sits on contains something they've been trying to get their hands on for years. The mineral rights alone are worth more than every property I own combined. I've left Prescott what will appear to be the more valuable inheritance to keep him distracted. The penthouse comes with considerable debt and maintenance costs that will become apparent within a year. The jewelry box contains my most treasured possessions, not valuable in terms of money, but precious to me. They belong to you now. Trust no one from the family, Eleonora. Not your parents, not your brother, and certainly not your husband. Find the strength I always saw in you. All my love, Grandma Cordelia. My hands trembled as I set down the letter. It couldn't be true. My own parents drugging me? My marriage arranged as part of some conspiracy? It was too outlandish, too melodramatic. Except I opened the first envelope and found detailed financial statements showing my grandmother's true wealth, exponentially greater than any of us had been led to believe. The second envelope contained geological surveys of the property on Wisteria Lane, revealing substantial deposits of rare earth minerals essential for manufacturing electronics. The third envelope held medical reports with my name on them, documenting blood tests showing trace amounts of sedatives and anti-anxiety medications in my system from ages 6 through 17. Medications I'd never knowingly taken. The fourth envelope was the most damning. Email correspondence between Thatcher and Prescott, dated before I'd even met my husband, discussing my management and the benefits of the arrangement. A prenuptial agreement I'd supposedly signed but had no memory of, giving Thatcher control of any inheritance I might receive. I felt physically ill. If these documents were genuine, and they appeared to be, my entire life had been orchestrated by people who saw me not as a person, but as an asset to be controlled. The jewelry box contained just a few items: my grandmother's wedding ring, a locket with pictures of us together, and a small silver key with a tag reading Cordelia's Hope, the real legacy. I repacked everything except the letter, and one document showing the mineral rights to the Wisteria Lane property. Those I folded carefully and tucked into my purse. "Find anything interesting?" Larissa asked when I emerged from the bank. "You could say that." My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "Can you take me back to the house?" "I need to think." "Are you okay?" "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm not sure what I've seen." I stared out the window as we drove, the familiar streets of my hometown suddenly seeming alien. "I need to make some calls when we get back." "Is there any chance you could stay for a while? I don't want to be alone right now." "Of course." I've got nowhere to be until Monday. When we returned to the house, I found Thatcher's car in the driveway again, along with Prescott's luxury SUV. They were standing on the porch, deep in conversation that halted abruptly when they saw us. "Eleonora, thank God." Thatcher rushed toward me with convincing concern. "We've been worried sick." "Why haven't you been answering your phone?" I hadn't even noticed it was missing. "I must have left it here." "Where have you been?" Prescott demanded, his tone less gentle than Thatcher's. "Getting breakfast with an old friend." I gestured to Larissa, who gave a tight-lipped smile. "Larissa, you remember my husband and my brother?" "Hard to forget," she said coolly. "We need to talk, Eleonora." Prescott stepped forward. "There's been a development with Grandma's estate, some paperwork issues that need your immediate attention." "What kind of issues?" "Nothing serious, but the sooner we handle it, the better." He glanced at Larissa. "Family business. Perhaps your friend could give us some privacy." "Actually, I'd like her to stay." I moved past them to unlock the front door. Whatever we need to discuss, we can do it inside. The house looked even worse in daylight, dust motes dancing in the sunbeams that penetrated the grimy windows. Thatcher and Prescott followed me in, their expensive shoes and clothing incongruous against the decaying interior. "What is this?" Thatcher stopped short, staring at the wall of photographs. "Why are there pictures of you all over the place?" Grandma kept track of my life. I turned to face them both. She kept track of a lot of things, actually. Something in my tone made Prescott's eyes narrow. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I spent the night reading her journals." Very enlightening. The two men exchanged a quick glance that confirmed everything I needed to know. Grandma Cordelia hadn't been paranoid. She'd been right. "Journals?" Thatcher forced a laugh. "Your grandmother was confused in her final years, honey. You know that. The doctors all agreed she was suffering from paranoid delusions. Doctors your family selected and paid for," Larissa muttered behind me. Prescott shot her a venomous look before softening his expression for me. "Eleonora, we're worried about you. First, you insist on staying in this death trap overnight. Now you're talking about journals and implying—" What exactly? I couldn't confront them directly. Not yet. Not until I understood the full scope of what I was dealing with. I needed time to process, to plan. "I'm not implying anything. I'm just trying to understand why Grandma left me this house specifically." "Because it was worthless," Prescott said bluntly. "The property needs to be raised. The cost of bringing this structure up to code would exceed any potential value." "Then why are you both so eager for me to sell it immediately?" Another glance between them. Thatcher stepped forward, reaching for my hand. I let him take it, fighting the urge to recoil. "We're concerned about your safety, that's all." "This place is a liability. If someone were to get hurt here, you could be sued." "I appreciate the concern." I gently extracted my hand from his. "But I think I want to explore my options before making any decisions. Maybe get the property assessed professionally." "That's unnecessary," Prescott said quickly. "I've already had it looked at." "By who?" "A colleague in real estate. Trust me, it's not worth the effort." I needed to change tactics. "You're probably right, but Grandma's letter said she hoped I'd find what I needed here. I'd like a few days to look through her things, for sentimental reasons." Relief visibly washed over both of them. They thought I was acquiescing. "Of course," Thatcher said magnanimously. "Take all the time you need. Within reason, of course. The property taxes will be due soon. Speaking of which," Prescott pulled a folder from his briefcase. "I've taken the liberty of drafting a power of attorney that would allow us to handle all the tedious paperwork on your behalf. It would make things much simpler." I glanced at the document he was offering. "I'll have to read through it carefully." "It's standard language," he assured me. "Nothing complicated. Still, I should probably have a lawyer look it over." "A lawyer?" Thatcher laughed. "That's unnecessary, Eleonora. Prescott is a lawyer." "A corporate lawyer, not an estate attorney?" I pointed out. "I'd feel more comfortable with a specialist." "Since when do you care about legal specialties?" Prescott's composure slipped slightly. "Just sign the damn document so we can move forward." Larissa stepped closer to me, a silent show of support. "I think Nora's being perfectly reasonable." "It's a big decision. This doesn't concern you," Thatcher snapped. "Actually, it does." I moved to stand beside Larissa. "I've asked Larissa to help me sort through Grandma's belongings. She's taking a few days off work to stay with me here." Here?" Thatcher looked genuinely alarmed. "You can't be serious." "The place isn't habitable. We'll manage." I met his gaze steadily. "I'll call you when I'm ready to discuss next steps." Prescott looked like he wanted to argue further, but Thatcher placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Fine. Take your time." He smiled at me, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just remember, we're on your side, Eleonora. We want what's best for you." After they left, Larissa turned to me with wide eyes. "Okay, what the hell was that about?" They were practically salivating over getting you to sign that document. I pulled out the papers from the safety deposit box and handed them to her. According to these, this worthless property is sitting on a fortune in rare earth minerals, and they know it. Larissa let out a low whistle as she scanned the geological survey. Holy shit, Nora. Do you have any idea what this is worth? Enough that my family has apparently been conspiring for years to get control of it. I sank onto the dusty sofa. The question is, what do I do now? That question became more urgent the next morning when I discovered someone had been in the house overnight. The attic trunk had been forced open, the journals scattered. The window seat in my old bedroom had been pried apart, the hidden compartment exposed. They'd been looking for the safety deposit box key, but they were too late. More disturbing were the new locks on the exterior doors, locks for which I had no key. A note had been taped to the front door, condemned by order of Whispering Pines Building Authority. No admittance without proper authorization. They're trying to lock us out, Larissa said as we stood on the porch, staring at the official-looking notice. Can they even do that? Not legally. But Prescott has connections in the town government. I tugged at the door handle fruitlessly. We need to find a way back in. Or we could take this as a sign to get the hell out of Dodge. These people are seriously disturbed, Nora. If they're willing to go this far, who knows what else they might do. She was right to be concerned. But running away would mean surrendering, and I'd done enough of that in my life. I can't leave. Not yet. There's something else here. Something Grandma called Cordelia's hope. The real legacy. I need to find it. Larissa sighed. Fine. But we're calling the police about this. She gestured to the condemned notice. This has to be illegal. The local police were sympathetic, but ultimately unhelpful. Without proof that the condemnation notice was fraudulent, they couldn't intervene. They suggested I contact the building authority directly to resolve the issue. The building authority, unsurprisingly, had no record of any condemnation order for the property on Wisteria Lane, but they also couldn't help remove the locks without proper authorization, which would take days to process. This is ridiculous. I fumed as we sat in Larissa's car outside the municipal building. They've effectively stolen my property, and nobody can do anything about it. Not nobody, Larissa said thoughtfully. I have a cousin who's a locksmith. He owes me a favor. 2 hours later, we were back inside the house with new keys to new locks. I immediately went to check on the one thing I hadn't had a chance to investigate. A small door in the back of the pantry that I'd noticed the day before. It looked like it might lead to a cellar, but it had been secured with an old padlock. The padlock was gone now, the door hanging slightly ajar. Someone had found it before us. Should we go down there? Larissa looked nervous. We have to. Whatever Cordelia's hope is, I bet it's down those stairs. The cellar was surprisingly vast, extending well beyond the footprint of the house above. Unlike the cluttered, dusty rooms upstairs, this space had been recently cleaned and organized. Metal shelving units lined the walls, filled with sealed plastic bins. In the center of the room stood a large table covered in maps and documents, and there, examining those documents with a flashlight, was a man I'd never seen before. He looked up when we entered, his expression shifting from surprise to relief. Thank God. I've been trying to contact you for days. He straightened up, extending his hand. Harlan Devereaux. I was your grandmother's attorney. You're not the lawyer who handled her will, I said, not taking his hand. That was Bradford Wellington. Bradford was her public attorney. I handled her private affairs. He gestured to the documents on the table. Your grandmother anticipated that her death would trigger certain actions from your family. She asked me to wait until you found your way here before revealing the full extent of her arrangements. And I'm supposed to just trust you because you say so? I remained by the stairs, ready to flee if necessary. He smiled slightly. Cautious? Good. Cordelia said you'd need to be. He reached into his pocket and removed a small object, a key identical to the one I had found in the jewelry box. I believe you have the twin to this. Together, they opened the final lock. I reluctantly took out my key. What final lock? Harlan moved to one of the shelving units and pulled it away from the wall, revealing a small safe embedded in the concrete. This contains Cordelia's hope, the culmination of 20 years of careful planning. I approached slowly, Larissa close behind me. The safe had 2 keyholes side by side. Your grandmother believed in redundancy, Harlan explained. Neither key works without the other. She kept one and entrusted the other to me, with instructions to bring it here only when you had discovered yours. How did you know I'd found it? The safety deposit box at First Mercantile is monitored. When it was accessed yesterday, I was notified. I hesitated, still unsure whether to trust this stranger. But if he'd wanted to harm me, he'd had ample opportunity already. I held out my key. Together? He nodded, and we each inserted our keys into the safe. They turned with a satisfying click, and the door swung open. Inside was another box, this one wooden, intricately carved with vines and flowers. Harlan stepped back. This is for you alone. I'll wait upstairs to answer any questions you have afterward. After he left, I carefully lifted out the wooden box and set it on the table. The lid opened easily to reveal a leather-bound book different from the journals upstairs. It was newer, its pages crisp and professionally bound. The Harrington Trust, restated and amended, read the cover. I opened it to find a legal document hundreds of pages long, but with a handwritten note from my grandmother paper-clipped to the first page. Eleonora, my brightest hope, what you hold in your hands is the true Harrington Family Trust, not the diminished version your parents and brother believe exists. While they thought they were draining the family wealth, I was quietly building a separate trust in your name. Everything I've done for you. The one member of our family who values more than money, who sees beauty where others see only opportunity for profit. The minerals beneath Wisteria Lane are indeed valuable, but their true worth lies not in their extraction, but in their preservation. The ecosystem surrounding those deposits is home to 3 endangered species. The environmental protections this triggers makes the land priceless, not as real estate, but as a conservation trust. I've arranged for the property to be designated as a wildlife preserve, with you as its steward. The foundation established in your name will provide you with an annual income of $500,000 to maintain and protect this land. Prescott received what he values: temporary status and material wealth. You have received what I know you will value: purpose, security, and the means to make a difference. The land is yours, my darling. What you do with it is your choice. But know that its greatest value lies in leaving it untouched. All my love, Grandma Cordelia. Beneath the note was a bank statement showing the current value of the Harrington Conservation Trust. $67 million. Nora? Larissa's voice seemed to come from far away. Are you okay? I looked up, tears blurring my vision. She protected me? All this time, when I thought she'd forgotten about me, she was building this safety net. What are you going to do? I thought of the house above us, neglected but filled with memories, of the wall of photographs chronicling a life I'd been manipulated to forget, of Thatcher and Prescott, so desperate to gain control of what they thought was just a valuable piece of real estate. First, I'm going to divorce my husband, I said, closing the book carefully. Then, I'm going to restore this house and turn the property into exactly what Grandma intended, a preserve. And your brother? Your parents? They'll learn that I'm not the passive, controllable person they thought I was. I stood up straighter, feeling a strength I hadn't known I possessed. Grandma saw something in me that they never did, that I never saw in myself. It's time I lived up to that vision. Upstairs, I found Harlan waiting patiently in what had been the living room. He'd cleared some of the dust from an armchair and was reviewing documents from his briefcase. "I have questions," I said as I entered the room. "I expected you would." He gestured to the sofa across from him. "Your grandmother prepared me to answer most of them." Over the next hour, Harlan explained the complex legal structure Grandma Cordelia had created. The property on Wisteria Lane was indeed valuable for its mineral deposits, but she had arranged for it to be designated a conservation area due to the endangered species that made their home there. The designation meant the land could never be developed or mined, a fact she had kept secret from the rest of the family. The trust she'd established provided funds for maintaining the property and supporting conservation efforts, with me as both beneficiary and trustee. The worthless house I'd inherited was sitting on protected land worth millions, not for its resources, but for its ecological value. Your brother's penthouse, while impressive, comes with significant maintenance costs and property taxes, Harlan explained. The building itself requires major structural repairs within the next year, repairs that will cost approximately 90% of the property's value. She set him up, I realized. She gave him exactly what he wanted, knowing it would become a burden. Your grandmother had a particular sense of justice, Harlan acknowledged with a slight smile. She believed people should receive what they truly valued. Prescott valued status and appearances. You valued security and purpose. And my husband? Did she know about his involvement? She suspected from the beginning. When he approached Prescott about investment opportunities shortly before meeting you, she began investigating. What she found confirmed her fears. He was interested not in you, but in what he believed you would eventually inherit. The prenuptial agreement in the safety deposit box, is it valid? No, it's a forgery. Your grandmother had a handwriting expert confirm it. You never signed it, which means your husband has no legal claim to any of your inheritance. Harlan closed his briefcase. If you decide to end your marriage, I can recommend several excellent divorce attorneys. I've already decided. I looked around the dusty, neglected house with new eyes. Not a worthless burden, but a blank canvas. Not a punishment, but an opportunity. When can we begin the divorce proceedings? Maybe immediately, if you wish. And while that's in process, we can start the restoration of the house and implementation of the conservation plan. Harlan left me with a stack of documents to review and a promise to return the next day with the divorce papers. Larissa and I spent the evening planning which room to clean first. I still can't believe your grandmother managed all this right under their noses, Larissa said, as we worked on making the kitchen functional. She must have been incredible. She was. I smiled, remembering the summers I'd spent here, Grandma Cordelia teaching me the names of birds and plants, encouraging my love of books, telling me I could be anything I wanted to be. I wish I'd known what she was going through. Maybe I could have helped her. She did what she did to protect you. And now you can honor her by becoming the person she knew you could be. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. The next morning, I was awakened by the sound of vehicles on the gravel driveway. Through the bedroom window, I could see Thatcher's Audi and Prescott's SUV, along with a truck from Whispering Pines Demolition Services. I rushed downstairs, Larissa close behind me. Through the newly installed peephole, I could see Thatcher, Prescott, and two men in hard hats examining the exterior of the house. "They've got demolition equipment," Larissa whispered, peering over my shoulder. "What the hell are they planning?" "They're going to tear it down." A cold certainty settled over me. They think if the house is gone, they can somehow get access to the land and the minerals beneath it. Can they do that? Not legally. But when has that stopped them? I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling Harlan. He answered on the first ring. I was just about to call you. We have a situation. There's a demolition crew outside my house. I know. They filed for an emergency demolition permit this morning, claiming the structure is a public safety hazard. I'm on my way with an injunction, but I'm still 20 minutes out. Can you stall them? I'll try. I opened the door just as Prescott was speaking to the demolition workers. Don't need to wait for the paperwork. We're authorized to proceed immediately. The structure is unsafe and could collapse at any moment. That's funny, I said loudly, stepping onto the porch. The building inspector, who was here yesterday, said it was structurally sound. Prescott whirled around, his face flushing. Eleonora, I thought you'd gone back to the city. Clearly. I folded my arms. What are you doing, Prescott? Protecting you as always. His recovery was impressive. This building is dangerous. We're having it removed before someone gets hurt. Do you have a demolition permit? It's being processed. But given the imminent danger, there is no imminent danger, and you know it. I turned to the workers. Gentlemen, I'm the legal owner of this property, and I have not authorized any demolition. If you proceed without proper permits and my explicit permission, I will sue both you and your company. The workers exchanged uncomfortable glances. Mr. Harrington said it was all cleared with the owner. One of them said, I am the owner, Eleanor Harrington Voss, and I am explicitly telling you that nothing has been cleared. Thatcher stepped forward then, his expression a masterful blend of concern and exasperation. Eleonora, be reasonable. We're trying to help you. This place is a liability. That's not for you to decide. I stood my ground. Please leave my property immediately, all of you. Your property? Prescott laughed incredulously. You haven't paid property taxes on this land in years. According to municipal records, it's in arrears and subject to seizure. Actually, I smiled, enjoying the moment, the property taxes have been paid through a conservation trust established by Grandmother Cordelia. I have the receipts inside if you'd like to see them. Prescott's confident expression faltered. What conservation trust? There's no trust. The Harrington Conservation Trust, established 20 years ago to protect the endangered species that make their home here. I watched realization dawn on their faces. Oh, you didn't know? This land can never be developed or mined. It's protected in perpetuity. That's impossible, Thatcher whispered. The mineral rights alone are worth millions. I finished for him, which is precisely why Grandma Cordelia ensured they would remain untouched. Prescott's face had turned an alarming shade of purple. You're lying. There's no conservation trust. We would have known. The same way you knew about Grandma's journals? Or the safety deposit box? Or the true extent of her estate? I shook my head. You underestimated her. You thought she was just a confused old woman you could manipulate, but she was smarter than all of us. A sleek black car pulled up then, and Harlan emerged with a folder in his hand. Gentlemen, he called as he approached, I have here an emergency injunction prohibiting any demolition or alteration of this property. He handed the document to the bewildered workers. You might want to consult with your legal department before proceeding. The workers looked at the paper, then at Prescott, who was visibly seething. I think we'll head out, one of them said. Call us when the situation is clearer. They climbed back into their truck and drove away, leaving us in a tense standoff. Who the hell are you? Thatcher demanded of Harlan. Harlan Devereaux. I represent Ms. Harrington's interests in the Harrington Conservation Trust. He turned to me. I've brought the other documents we discussed. Thank you, Harlan. I took the folder he offered, divorce papers already prepared. This isn't over, Prescott warned. Whatever game you're playing, you can't win. We'll contest the trust, claim Grandmother was manipulated. By whom? I interrupted. The same grandmother you claimed was paranoid and delusional? You can't have it both ways, Prescott. Either she was competent to establish the trust, or she was incompetent when she left you that debt-ridden penthouse. Thatcher was staring at the folder in my hands. What are those papers? Ain't. Divorce papers. I held them out to him. I've decided our marriage isn't working for me anymore. His shock quickly morphed into calculation. You don't want to do this, Eleonora. As your husband, I'm entitled to half of everything you own. That would be true, except for 3 things. I ticked them off on my fingers. 1, most of my assets are held in a trust established before our marriage. 2, the prenuptial agreement you forged is not valid. And 3, I have documented evidence that you conspired with my family to manipulate and defraud me. Would you like me to continue, or would you prefer to sign these papers and walk away while you still can? For the first time since I'd known him, Thatcher Voss looked completely defeated. He took the papers without another word. Prescott, however, wasn't finished. This is ridiculous. Whatever Grandma left you, she left me too. I'm still entitled to my share of the family assets. You've received exactly what was intended for you, Harlan replied calmly. The penthouse property on Riverside Drive, which I understand you've already leveraged to secure additional investments. What are you talking about? The property requires significant structural repairs within the year, repairs that will cost approximately 90% of its market value. I believe you've already used it as collateral for several loans. The blood drained from Prescott's face. That's not possible. The inspection report was falsified at Cordelia's instruction. Harlan's expression remained impassive. She believed you should receive exactly what you valued most, the appearance of wealth without the substance. Prescott lunged forward as if to grab Harlan, but Thatcher caught his arm. Don't! You'll make it worse. He turned to me, his expression carefully controlled. We'll review these papers with our attorney. This discussion isn't over. Yes, it is, I said firmly. You have 72 hours to sign the divorce papers. After that, I'll proceed with a contested divorce and include the evidence of fraud and conspiracy. Your choice. After they left, the 3 of us, Harlan, Larissa, and I, stood in silence for a moment, absorbing what had just happened. That was badass, Larissa finally said. I didn't know you had it in you. Neither had I. All my life, I'd been the one who needed protection, the one who couldn't stand up for herself. But standing on that porch, facing down the people who had manipulated me for years, I'd felt a strength I'd never known I possessed. What happens now? I asked Harlan. Now we move forward. The conservation trust is solid. The divorce should proceed smoothly, especially given the evidence we have, and the restoration of this house can begin whenever you're ready. I looked up at the dilapidated structure, seeing beyond its current state to what it could become. Not just a house, but a center for environmental education. Not just a property, but a legacy. I'm ready to begin now, I said. 6 months later, the transformation was well underway. The house on Wisteria Lane had been carefully restored, maintaining its historic character while updating its systems and structure. The wall of photographs remained intact, now properly framed and preserved. Thatcher had signed the divorce papers within 48 hours of our confrontation, once his lawyer confirmed the validity of the evidence against him. Prescott had been less cooperative, filing a series of increasingly desperate lawsuits attempting to break the conservation trust. Each had been summarily dismissed. My parents had reached out exactly once, with a terse email suggesting we move past these unfortunate misunderstandings. I hadn't responded. Some bridges, once burned, should remain in ashes. The first floor of the house now served as a visitor center for the newly established Cordelia Harrington Wildlife Preserve. School groups came regularly to learn about the endangered species that made their home on the property. Researchers conducted studies on the unique ecosystem, and I, to my own surprise, had discovered a passion for environmental education. Larissa had moved into the renovated guest house on the property, taking a position as the preserve's administrative director. Harlan remained a trusted advisor and friend, guiding me through the intricacies of running a conservation trust. On a crisp autumn morning, almost exactly a year after I'd first inherited the worthless house, I stood on the back porch, watching the sunrise over the trees. The property stretched for acres, untouched and protected, a sanctuary, just as Grandma Cordelia had intended. I thought about the wall of photographs, the timeline of a life I'd been manipulated to forget, the shy, bookish girl who'd spent summers exploring these woods with her grandmother, the young woman who'd been gradually convinced she was incapable of independence, the wife who'd accepted an allowance and constant criticism as her due. That woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone who understood her own worth, not measured in dollars or property values, but in purpose and integrity. From my pocket, I took out the small key that had unlocked not just a safe, but my future, the key to Cordelia's hope. I'd had it made into a pendant, a reminder of the grandmother who'd seen what I could become long before I saw it myself. In her final journal entry, written just days before her death, Grandma Cordelia had written, "The true measure of wealth is not what you own, but what you protect." Eleonora will understand this someday, and when she does, she'll be the richest of us all. Standing there, watching the morning mist rise from the protected land stretching before me, I finally understood what she meant. My brother had inherited a penthouse that was slowly bankrupting him. I had inherited a purpose that was daily enriching me. Not financially, though the trust provided more than enough for a comfortable life, but spiritually. The worthless house had never been my real inheritance. My true legacy was the strength to stand on my own, to protect what mattered, and to become the woman my grandmother had always believed I could be. In the end, she hadn't left me a burden. She'd left me freedom, and that was worth more than all the rare earth minerals in the world.